afternoon. My name is Devin Lincoln and I'd like to present to you my thesis proposal. Today we'll be talking about my case study, which is on the transfer of HR practices from the Americas to Europe in Swedish MNC. So, objectives and research questions. Today, an increasing amount of MNCs are thinking more consciously about utilizing the resources and internally sharing knowledge among their subsidiaries. In the field of HRM, many organizations are taking more of a strategic approach to these practices and are moving towards more of HRM practices to gain a competitive advantage in their overall business plan. Previous research shows that HR policies and practices have the ability to impact an organization market and indirectly affect their human capital. Some previous research shows that, or writes about these sticky areas within transfer of knowledge, which means that there may be a formulated model to follow in an MNC while transferring, say, HR practices. However, these become the gray area within a transfer process that aren't really researched. My research question in this case is, what are the factors influencing the outcome of a transferred HR practices? I'd like to get down to these gray areas, investigate what are the influences that affect the outcome in an overall successful transfer of HR practices. And the key objective of this research is to go more in depth in a Swedish MNC within these practices, find the challenges, see how they influence the outcomes. I'd ultimately like to compare the key performance indicators of this transfer practices from a recruitment team that will be applied from the Americas to Europe. And then also in the analysis of my study, I'd like to apply this to institutional theory, translation theory, and perhaps others when conducting my research. I believe that it relates to my studies because of the mimetic isomorphism this MNC is presenting. It's basically trying to conform and become more standardized to the rest of the world, but also to its own company. They want to become one company. So they're becoming more mimetic in their approach and practices. The framework of my study will be from a practitioner's perspective, as you saw in the title of the research. Basically, what I mean by this is that there are numerous amounts of previous research that claim and that argue that research has most commonly been based on and written for other researchers. And in my case, my objective is to write from a practitioner's perspective, find tangible empirical evidence that can be applied to an actual business model, and also bridge the gap between the ivory tower and theory and actually apply this to a real business model. I also would like to bridge the gap between the literature of translation theory but also knowledge transfer. There's not much out there in this case when it comes to bringing them together. It will also support several theories, but also provide empirical evidence from the company's documents. The background of my study, basically we're wanting to know what has been done before when relating to the transfer of HRM practices. And among many journals and articles, they relate to the local adaptation of subsidiaries from an MNC's transfer of knowledge. That's usually been the main focus when it comes to transfer knowledge and HR practices. However, not much research has been done on the actual process of transfer, and that's something that I'd like this case to focus on. Another issue deserving more research interest is that of translation theory. There is very, very little research done about translation theory and actually applying it to something as tangible as the transfer of HR practices. Thus, I'd like to go more in depth with this and see how actually different practitioners translate the meaning of a transfer practice and how this affects the outcomes and the overall say, KPIs of a business. So something about the Case Company. This is a Swedish MNC. They were founded in 1942. It's a global hygiene products company, and they have over 100 companies around the world. So this company has decided that they want to transfer a model that's been created in their Americas office and transfer this to their European offices. They find that it's working very efficiently and that it's been proven successful. What this practice is recruitment practices. And as of right now, they have a recruitment team internally that locates and finds talent. So they're sourcing talent proactively. And this is a concept that hasn't really been done in the past for this company. So what they've done from headquarters in Sweden is that they've decided to take this Americas model and bring it over to Europe. Now, the twist of this case is that I'm actually the researcher is actually going to be working at this Case Company within this new team, in the European team. And so what I have the advantage of doing is creating very, very up-close, in-depth observational notes. I have access to all of the different processes within this transfer, and I will be interviewing in-depth, semi-structured, the different key roles within this transfer. Links to previous research. The first journal I want to talk about is Global Integration Mechanisms, and this was highly relatable to my study because it provided empirical data that supported the integration mechanisms that should be used during the selection and recruitment process. And pertaining to my research topic, I think this would be a good tool to analyze the evidence that I find in finding, do they use these certain mechanisms that they suggest in the study to this MNC in Sweden compared to America and Europe? Are they using this specific mechanism? What does it mean to the outcome? Another journal that I found was highly relatable was this concept of stickiness, or gray area, if you will. This is basically what I'm in the middle of now at this Case Company. I will be observing basically the challenges that will occur within the transfer process and what this means to the outcomes. Another one that I find relatable is the research conducted for researchers versus for practitioners. I think this is a substantial addition to my research because it argues that there's too many articles already written about theories and models, but what happens in the actual field. And that is what I will be taking as my framework, is from a practitioner's perspective. So the last article that I find relevant is called Key Factors Affecting Transnational Knowledge Transfer. Now this was the closest one relating to my study. And basically it was a quantitative study, and the factors that they found in this study that related to transnational knowledge transfer, was relationships, culture awareness, language, motivation, objectivity, and focus. And I think this is a very interesting topic. It is the quantitative, form of what I'm trying to do with this Swedish MNC. However, I will be taking a qualitative approach and trying to figure out more in depth what factors influence the outcomes. However, I will be using this quantitative study as kind of a jumping point as to what I can focus on when doing observations, when doing interviews, and seeing how this can affect the outcomes of the overall transfer process. The methodology and theoretical framework of this study will, like I said previously, be a qualitative case study. I will use the form of semi-structured interviews. I will be using snowball sampling method in which case one person I interview will suggest another person that is relevant to the topic at hand. I'll also be using participant observation. I've been already a participant within a week training seminar with this new recruitment team, and also had some of the people from the Americas team come over and face-to-face do training with us. So this was a great opportunity to do some observational notes. And there will be more to come where we meet on virtual meetings, as well as doing interviews, like I previously stated. A limitation of this research is that, yes, there is a risk. As for the analysis, I will begin by transcribing all the recorded semi-structured interviews into text. Then I will be also look for recurring themes throughout these transcribed interviews and try to formulate some sort of conclusions relating to the research question. I will also apply these conclusions and empirical data to the translation and institutional theory, how this relates, and how people have translated this process throughout, and what this kind of consequences have on the institution. A limitation of this research is that, yes, there is a risk of bias because I am working for the company. However, we will get to the ethical challenges next, and I will explain how this bias will be avoided throughout the conducting of research. Another limitation is that because this is the only MNC that I will be researching in depth, it makes generalization of facts to a wider context not possible. My general time plan will be inspired by the different seminar dates. So I will actually be striving for completion in the fall 2015. This is because I will be also working full-time in parallel to my studies, and this is a more realistic submission date. Relating to ethical considerations for this case, the first one, of course, is the role of researcher versus the role of an employee. Although I am an employee of the case company, this does not mean that I will be intending to have some kind of conflict of interest and write purely for the satisfaction of a company. I will not be getting any kind of payment from the company to do this research. This is purely on my own academic needs. And I also will be having mentors, both from academia, from the university, and also from the field at the case company. These mentors will have discussions with me and make sure that I will not, make sure that I actually consider all different angles of this case, and that I'm not going in just one direction with my conclusions. Anonymity, this is also something that has been considered, and I've already spoken with the case company, gotten approval for writing the case, and also have spoken with them about the fact that their names will not be mentioned when I do the interviews. Preliminary results. I intend to bridge the gap between the institutional and translational theory by providing empirical evidence substantial from a real MNC, and apply this to the analysis. So I'd like to kind of validate these theories if I argue for them or against them by providing this empirical evidence. Another preliminary result is that I'd like to add to the theoretical debate by bridging the gap of literature between the cited theories, translational institutional theories, and the literature of HR knowledge transfer. The majority of literature has not seen this kind of fusion between HRM and translation theory. It's mostly been within innovation and other business fields. Lastly, the cost planning. There are no direct costs associated with this research. Actually, the case company will not be providing any kind of monetary or benefits to my salary that I have already made in my current role. So this will all be on my free time. There is potential to fly to the different countries within the recruitment team, say Russia or Germany or Spain. However, there's so much technology provided within the team for this role that it's unlikely that I will be traveling to do this research. There are several indirect costs such as administrative services for the university, as well as the cost of time from the case company provided by mentor services and the time allotted to conduct employee interviews. So that is my thesis proposal. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening.